Sure, yeah. And I say that as a Christian, as a saved Christian, as a march into hell for Jesus Christ Christian. Yeah, there's an occasion when war is appropriate.
What would that be?
Okay. Well, in anticipation of this, I put down the five for a just war. What's called a just war. Something that if you meet these requirements, the war would be. It's hard for me to say moral. You know, I don't believe that any war can be finally moral, but just. Is it appropriate to go to war? And the first, you have to meet these 5 requirements to go to war. First, you have to have a cause. There must be some harm that is so great that it cannot be stopped short of a war effort. Everyone, you have exhausted every other possible solution to the problem, and the harm is still there. And you've got to stop that harm. And that's the job. Killing our people, sinking our ships. Just cause, just intent is the second one. You have to have the right intent, which means there's no revenge, there's no punishment loaded into the war. You are simply attempting to stop some harm. No revenge, no punishment loaded into. Your intent must be right. No personal or no national gain, like overseas possessions, imperialism, nothing like that. Proportionality. In the conduct of the war, you must use that amount of force and no more amount of force than is required to achieve your objective. So the use of nuclear weapons is virtually prohibited in any war because of the long-range lasting consequences of the use of nuclear weapons. And that's just the most glaring example of a violation of proportionality. The use of nuclear weapons, because the consequences of nuclear weapon use goes way beyond the immediacy of any war effort. Authority. To have a just war, or if you want to call it a moral war, it must be an authorized war. I can't go off and start fighting people on my own. And in our system of governance, the Congress of the United States is the authority. So if Congress has authorized the war, then whether it be right or wrong, moral or immoral, with respect to authority, one of the 5 requirements, it's a legal war. Congress has authorized the effort. And then success. You don't want to fight a war. This is very practical. You do not want to fight a war unless you think you can win it. You know, why sacrifice lives and property in what you know is a losing effort? You've got to have some expectation of success. So if you meet these 5 requirements, a just cause, just intent, proportionality in the conduct of the war, right authority to fight the war, and a reasonable probability of success, then these are the 5 requirements that must be met in order to conduct a just, or if you will, a moral war. And in certain limited cases, and again I say as a Christian, I could support a war effort. Not necessarily chemical, but nuclear. If there is a law, if there's an international law banning chemical weapons, then yeah, we can't use them. But the only weapon that I would say is unacceptable would be nuclear, because the consequences can stretch out for thousands of years. As far as I know, I don't claim to be an expert on nuclear war, but I know that the consequences of a nuclear explosion carry forward into the future, way beyond the termination of the war. Oh, sure. Just warfare would be once the Japanese attacked us and sunk our fleet on December 7th, 1941, it was a just war in terms of cause to prevent the Japanese from doing more of that. Because we knew that the Japanese were about to do a lot more of that. So we had a just cause. Our intent was right, to stop the Japanese from doing that. We had the right authority. We had reasonable probability of success. The only problem was proportionality. At the very end of the war, we dropped 2 atomic bombs. But no, World War II, I would characterize World War II, with the exception of the dropping of the 2 bombs, a just or a moral war. Well, to prevent some harm. For example, you have to keep the door open for the possibility that elsewhere, outside the United States, something so horrible is going on. Like the prospect of millions of people are going to be slaughtered, that is an act, as a humanitarian act, you have to step in and prevent that harm. Even though you or this nation is not going to be attacked, from a Christian ethics perspective, you can't sit idly by and watch other people being slaughtered needlessly. You just can't. And that's from a Christian ethical perspective, which sets up the conditions under which you could go to war without being attacked yourself. Had I known in 1940 what was happening to the Jews in Europe, I could have said, we have to stop that. We have to get over there and stop the extermination of a people. Without the attack on Pearl Harbor. I said, we can't let that happen. We can't, as Christians, we can't sit idly by and watch these people being slaughtered. We can't. Okay. Pretty much so. Yeah, pretty much so. I'm not an expert on the international law of war, but my understanding of the international laws relating to war reflect essentially what I've been saying here. I've missed one thing, though, and that is with respect to the treatment of prisoners. When you engage in war, you have a legal and a moral obligation to treat prisoners with respect. Basically, it's the golden rule. You do to your prisoners what you would have your enemy do to your people when they're captured. And that's both legal and moral. I know that in terms of international law, in terms of our code of uniform justice, and in terms of morality. We have to treat prisoners properly. Oh, and that would include no torture. Under no conditions can we torture. And recently our administration has come under fire for having tolerated torture. And therefore, our new president has said under no conditions will he tolerate torture. And the Congress is behind the new president on that issue. No torture.